Good morning, and thank you so much for joining this, the last of 5 sessions in the Midwest Climate Summit's think tank. You are with the Science and Research Track workshop on challenges and solutions in renewable energy for the Midwest. Just as a brief grounding and reminder in what the purpose of the Science and Research Workshop Track is. Our goal overall across these 5 sessions has been to synthesize what's already known about climate impacts and solutions in the Midwest, to develop a climate research agenda focused on strategies that can inform and accelerate climate mitigation and adaptation in the Midwest over the next 10 years, and to build a network of climate researchers across the Midwest who can facilitate research collaboration, research translation, and in so doing, enhance the profile of Midwestern climate experts. I would also say it's to build a community across the researchers, the stakeholders, the government officials, the business community around these solutions that the Midwest is needing. Our session, which is focused on the challenges and solutions for renewable energy, brings together a really great panel of experts today to share their perspectives on the major challenges that they see to realizing a low carbon future. Our low carbon future needs to entail the rapid deployment of renewable energy at scale throughout the region. Some states like Wisconsin, and I'm happy to say recently Michigan as a Wolverine, have set goals of carbon neutrality by 2050. How will we get there? How can researchers, companies, policymakers, and communities through the region help them get to those goals, help us get to those goals, and adapt? Because we're holding this session as part of the Science and Research Track, our hope is that the speakers will highlight the outstanding questions that need answering, both during their presentations and also in greater detail during the breakout sessions to follow. Before we get to our panelists, I have just a few logistical matters that I need to cover. This session is being recorded, as will be the breakout sessions. When you registered for the summit, you might have checked off whether you wanted to be an active or a listening participant. We have simplified this, so if you want to actively engage with our speakers in the audience, just when we get to the right part of the session, leave on your video. All of you can share information and ask questions in the chat. But if you also want to just turn off your video and listen to the presentations, you're more than welcome to participate in that fashion. We are assuming that for better or worse, everyone here is mostly familiar with Zoom, so I won't spend a lot of time on how you participate in Zoom. But if you do have a question, please put it in the chat, or you can also use the raise your hand function. Okay, let me introduce our speakers. And I'll do brief introductions in the order in which they're going to be speaking to you. First, we're very pleased to have Maria Redman, who is the director of the state of Wisconsin's Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy. Governor Evers created this office last year through an executive order to help the state achieve its carbon reduction goals of the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement and to transition to carbon-free electricity by 2050. Prior to this new role, Maria's had a long career in state government in a variety of energy-related positions. Second, we have Lucas Nelson joining us from Nebraska, where he's a policy associate with the Center for Rural Affairs. Lucas is one of the recipients of the 2019 Midwest Energy News's 40 Under 40 Awards. Welcome, Lucas. Also, then we have Dr. Sarah Mills, who's the Senior Project Manager at the Graham Sustainability Institute, where she runs the Energy Futures Initiative and is also with the Ford School of Public Policy at the University of Michigan. She works closely with the State of Michigan's Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, and also serves on the City of Ann Arbor's Planning Commission. Last but not least, we have Beth Soholt, who is the executive director of the Clean Grid Alliance in Minneapolis. Beth spent her career working with the electric industry in various capacities and currently holds a seat on MISO, the Midwest Independent System Operator Advisory Committee representing the environment sector. So what I've asked each of our speakers to do is talk in their respective areas that they're working in about the challenges that they see getting to this low carbon future, some of the things they're doing to address it, and then touch on here and again in the breakouts what the outstanding questions are that need to be addressed. And without further ado, I would like to turn the floor over to Maria. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to kick off this discussion. Looking forward to hearing the other speakers and the breakouts and having the smaller discussions as well. Before I jump into my presentation, I just want to take this opportunity to give a land acknowledgement that I live on land and in a community, Madison, Wisconsin, that was on land that was stolen from the Ho-Chunk Nation, and recognize the privilege that I have to realize because of the result of that action. And so while I can't reverse the past, I can help shape the future and look forward to working with our Native nations to ensure the work that we do reflects the respect of the land, air, and water for generations to come. So with that, I just want to talk about the ambitious goals that our administration has set for the state of Wisconsin, and I'm super excited to have been selected to direct this work for the state and coordinate and collaborate with a number of stakeholders on these efforts. And so in 2019, the administration, Governor Evers and Lieutenant Barnes, issued 2 major executive orders relating to this area, including Executive Order 38, establishing the Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy, and Executive Order 52, creating the Climate Task Force, so the Governor's Task Force on Climate Change. I'm going to get into a little of the work of the Executive Order 38 that's pertaining to my office in a second, but I wanted to highlight the Governor's Task Force on Climate Change quickly, that they met over the last 11 months and were able to put together and push to the Governor a set of recommendations to help adapt to and mitigate to climate change here in the state. And we will be making that report that was delivered on October 31st to the Governor by the deadline. We will be providing that report out to the public by hopefully by early December. We're working on validating some of the facts and getting everything in order and putting it in a nice design so that everybody can see that. So we'll have that out shortly. But the Governor is looking at those recommendations right now and coming up with a plan for implementation and pathway forward for those strategies. So that's really exciting. And as part of the Executive Order 38, creating the Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy, we have a directive to create a comprehensive clean energy plan, and that's really applicable to what we're talking about today. And our initial guiding environmental and economic health goals related to that plan is all electricity consumed within the state of Wisconsin is 100% carbon free by 2050. We also want to make sure that the state of Wisconsin is contributing to fulfilling the carbon reduction goals of the 2015 Paris Climate Accord. We also want to focus in on reducing the disproportionate impacts of energy generation and use on low income and communities of color. We want to maximize the creation and equitable opportunities for clean energy jobs, economic development and stimulus, and the retention of energy investment dollars here in Wisconsin. We want to improve reliability and affordability of the energy system. We also want to strengthen the clean energy workforce through training and education, and understand that we want to retain workers here in Wisconsin, and especially those affected by our transition from fossil fuels over to clean sources of energy. And then we want to protect our human and environmental health by reducing ecosystem pollution from fossil fuels. So that's a lot of work to be done. And I'm really spending a lot of my time right now organizing that work. And we've created a number of teams to help us, a technical team and an advisory team made up of 30 different organizations to help us guide us through the process. And really it's about people, it's about the environment, and it's about the economy, making sure that we're protecting our people here in the state, improving their health, getting them jobs, and working on respecting our land and air, and also making sure that we're keeping the money here in the state so that we have a thriving economy. And the challenges associated with that is that there's a lot of great work happening. There's a lot of stuff happening already in this space. And so we want to acknowledge that work. The utilities already have carbon goals. We have municipalities that are working on this already. And so really we want to build on all of that. But we know that there's a lot of influencing factors, including commodity markets, cost effectiveness and return on investment. There's weather that we have to look at, consumer role, policy, government support. There's also macroeconomic variables, including inflation, unemployment, that's really sensitive, that we need to include in our analysis. And we need extensive tools and methodology to make sure that the strategies that we're moving forward with, we can model out and we can create a path forward. And then one size doesn't fit all. You know, where do we start? Do we start with the sector, a specific sector, or do we start with the fuel type? Do we focus in on conservation or efficiency? We have our equity and social and environmental justice aspects of it, of which we didn't have before, which is, you know, really frustrating to say that we didn't focus in on that all along, but now we're really honing in on that. And then what's the state doing? Is the state leading by example? And is the technology available? So there's all of these challenges and factors that we have to take into consideration. So I'm just throwing all of these things out there. I know I only have 5 minutes and I probably went a little over that, but I'm looking forward to the discussion with the rest of the group, and hopefully this is a good kickstart to the conversation. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Maria. That was a great kickstart, though. What a long litany of things that need to be done and the questions and challenges. You've given us a lot to think about. Lou, would you please go next?
Yeah, certainly. Hello, everyone. My name is Lou Nelson. I'm a policy associate at the Center for Rural Affairs. We're a nonprofit based in Nebraska, but we work across the Midwest and Great Plains. Our mission is to help build up vibrant and healthy rural communities, often through finding new opportunities for those communities. And since our founding all the way back in 1973, renewable energy has always been one of those floating opportunities that we've seen in rural communities. And I think that's never been more evident than maybe in the past, I would say, 6 to 7 years, as we've seen real booms in utility scale wind energy and now solar energy as well. Both of those energy systems represent real opportunity for rural communities, providing a range of benefits. But as those booms have occurred across the Midwest, we have seen real challenges. And the top two that always jump out to me, and I think many other folks, are one, just available capacity on the electric grid, which I know Beth will cover more than ably later. And the other is just real community level challenges. And just to unpack those a bit more, I think we have seen a rise in a concerted opposition movement, one that often takes the real concerns of community members and the real questions of community members and tries to capitalize on those and really push back against projects, sometimes with a throw it all against the wall and see what sticks approach. That approach kind of leads us into another challenge, which is just local elected officials that are often unfamiliar with renewable energy systems, with the development process, with the operation of these systems, and often don't have the capability to find the best information, or even just quality neutral information that can inform their decision making. And they are dealing with sort of a solid push in many cases of misinformation or information that is just meant to kind of disrupt any kind of process. And then finally, I think the other challenge that a lot of communities face in rural areas especially is getting a real tangible idea of the benefits that can come to their community. I think it can sometimes come off as a sales pitch to these rural communities. And if you have a developer that's not from your area or even from your state coming in wanting to invest money, sounds great on paper, but there is a trust issue. Oftentimes it can feel like a sales pitch, and it's hard to determine what is real or not. And so it's a definite balancing act for elected officials, and there is often pressure from grassroots folks in the area or from outside the area pushing against projects. So those are the challenges. I'll go to hopeful solutions now. I think first and foremost, it's making sure that just real folks on the ground have access to the information that they need to make informed decisions. That is true for just a farmer, a community member, or even an elected official, just making sure that they feel like they can access information that's not necessarily biased in any way, not coming directly from a developer, maybe coming from a trusted source, hopefully, a university, for example. And also, really giving a clear picture of the benefits of a project, making sure that it is not in that sales pitch context, but really just, here are the actual, revenue streams that will come. Here are the typical agreements and what those lease agreements might pay off to hosts of projects. And also, what are the real tangible job benefits to an area? And I think maybe a broader solution that needs to be used in the future is just working with communities to form a better picture of what this means for their community in the long term. I think that leads to a lot of uncertainty around projects, and that just, that often helps opposition and really pushes down support for a project. And just to share a quick story to close out, one of my favorite examples of this is actually close to my hometown here in Nebraska. It's this little town of Petersburg, about 300 people. And this town really made an effort to connect with this developer in the area, really work with them. They even opened up impromptu laundromats for construction workers during the project. They made sure that they were involved in the process every step of the way. And they saw a huge payoff for the town in sort of those real tangible benefits, tax revenue, new jobs. But what really struck them is that what this meant most was this was part of the long-term plan for their community. It was about how can you build up this healthy community and really get these intangible benefits. And that includes, bringing new people to the area, building new houses. And the thing that they always mention is seeing baby carriages on the street of Petersburg for the first time in a decade, which, for a town of 300 means more than anything.
Thank you very much. That's a really vivid image for Petersburg. Sarah, I think you're working on similar things with communities across the Midwest. Please share with us what you're doing.
Sure. Well, and I think it's a nice segue from what Lou talked about. There's a real role for research. A lot of my research has been, and the work that Lou's been elevating to has been documenting kind of what are the impacts, science-based impacts, not the anecdotes that you might get from either side, either the negative, all that's negative or all that's positive. And that's possible. A lot of those, that research is possible to do with wind energy because we have lots of wind projects across the Midwest. My research started in Michigan looking at whether or not wind energy is a farmland preservation technique, and effectively what are farmers doing with the revenue that they're getting from hosting wind turbines on their property and reinvesting that. What's trickier, and I think what's what we're running into a lot in Michigan here, is that in addition to wind, increasingly solar is possible across the Midwest. But there are not tons of observables right now to be able to look at existing projects and say, these are the impacts that we know this will have on your community. And so, you might think, those who are on the phone, that solar would be a walk in the park compared to wind. If there's opposition to wind, like who would be opposed to solar? But some of this opposition, I don't want to say that like all communities are opposed to this, but a lot of this opposition is just because it's a land use that they never really contemplated in a rural community or at the scale that it's being proposed. Just for some kind of local context, in the state of Michigan right now, we have 100 megawatts of utility scale solar. Even if you don't know what a megawatt is, just keep that number in mind. The average solar project is about 5 megawatts in Michigan. What's being proposed, there's 70 utility scale projects that are currently in the MISO queue that Beth will probably talk about in a little bit, in Michigan alone. And the average project size is 135 megawatts. So just one of those would double. So, the scale of projects that are coming, the scale of solar projects that are coming is just unlike what is currently observable here. And so a lot of communities are trying to figure out what this means for them. There's certainly, just as Lou mentioned, on the solar side, there are economic benefits that we can pretty much guarantee come along with this. But rather than kind of the bad bat and bird impacts that are often questions about the negative impacts of wind, One of the common questions about the impacts of solar is on whether this is a wise use of this farmland that is so plentiful across the Midwest. Is this something that is compatible with land use or something with farmland use, or is it something that is potentially a new conflict with land use? And there's some research that's going on about, being able to combine these two things, some specialty crops that can be built under solar panels, but there's certainly more research that could happen there, and I'm welcome hearing any of you who are interested in that. But it's probably unlikely that we're going to be growing too much food or fiber directly under the panels. The thing that I think is important to elevate is that our agricultural lands aren't just for growing food and fiber. They often provide some other ecosystem services like carbon sequestration, like stormwater management or water quality improvement or habitat. And so to try to fill in this, gap of this challenge of, is this a wise use of our land? We're starting dialogues here in Michigan with solar energy developers and land conservation stakeholders to better understand the opportunities to layer some of these programs. Can you layer the energy provided by solar with some of these ecosystem services and use monies that USDA and other entities are paying landowners to provide some of those ecosystem services. So in the breakout session, I'm looking forward to talking about how we might have future research to square energy policy and ag policy and community impacts and the opportunities for renewable energy to meet multiple goals. Not just kind of clean energy and jobs that Lou was just talking about, but what are some of the other ecosystem services that might be provided by renewable energy?
Thank you so much. Beth, please.
Good morning, everyone. And I'm going to set my timer here, Jennifer. So here we go.
We're in good shape. Everyone else has been very disciplined. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to participate on this fun panel this morning and in the summit. I'm Beth Soholt, the Executive Director of Clean Grid Alliance. We've been around for almost 20 years as an advocacy organization in the Midwest, really working on the barriers to bringing renewable energy to market. And we're going to be 20 next year, and so as an organization. And so many of you probably know us better as Wind on the Wires. That's what we were launched as in 2001. In 2018, we rebranded to kind of better reflect the work that we were doing. We're really and have a bigger tent to work under. And so we really are working in wind, solar, storage, and other emerging technologies and bringing those to market. And really on the grid shift and transformation that we're seeing across the Midwest, that utility states, corporate entities, residential customers and others are wanting and demanding. And so our bread and butter kind of is in the technical, engineering, and legal field, but we do a lot of advocacy on state policy, regulatory work, and then we communicate a lot about it because these are kind of arcane, tough areas that are not easily understood. So we try to translate a lot of things into language that the average person can understand. And really connect the dots on why it matters. So as Jennifer mentioned, we have this trend underway, not only in the Midwest, but across the nation and world for that matter, of folks kind of jumping on the net zero by 2050 bandwagon in some form or fashion. And that is really kind of our North Star for the work that is going on right now. It used to be renewable portfolio standards, RPS, renewable energy standards. That was kind of the organizing, the thing that we organized around. The decarbonization of our electricity system and electrifying our economy is really kind of the new organizing principle. And so in order to achieve the goals and objectives that the variety of folks have set out that I just mentioned, and that all of you are working on in different ways, we need to have a grid, both at the distribution and the transmission or the bulk transmission level, that facilitates what we want to do. And that's easier said than done. We have this large machine that we are trying to turn around and re-energize in a different way. And so some of our key challenges are answering the question of what kind of grid do we need to achieve our decarbonization goals, and to bring all the other benefits along that some of my panel colleagues have talked about. And so we see some key themes and trends that we can organize around in the Midwest and at MISO: decarbonization, the need for flexibility, not only on the grid, but in our generation portfolio, the reliability aspect, still needing to keep the lights on as we transform the grid and decarbonize and really change to from fossil fuel to renewables. And so there's a lot of planning that is going on around what kind of grid is needed, and it's informed by what the utilities are wanting to do, what state goals there are. And so I will just say, kind of put a placeholder in for a lot of planning at the MISO level footprint that are trying to deliver on what states and others want. And I think that we've got some good solutions that are starting to pop up, but we've got some big challenges too. I just wanted to get in kind of two more things. Our biggest challenge, I think, is going to be the urgency or the time frame. And so when we think about the big transformation that we have to make, not only in the wires that deliver the electricity to our house, but in the generation sources. That is probably our biggest challenge. And then I just wanted to put in a plug for what do we need for engineering research, and what are the future opportunities for folks coming out of school. You know, there are some emerging technologies that are being worked on. But really, I think we need people who can articulate well the challenges and really bring people together who have very different viewpoints. So it's kind of this marrying up of the public policy advocacy aspect and understanding the engineering aspects and the technology aspects. And so I'll just leave it there. There's a lot to unpack here. We've got great challenges, but we've got a lot of solutions that are in our hip pocket already. And we don't need any huge breakthroughs until we get to a much greater penetration level of renewables on the grid.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear, because I often hear people say the renewables might take us 80% of the way to that 2050 carbon neutrality, but thereafter, the cost is enormous. Maybe you need firm forms of power. Maybe you need, you know, some leftover gas or nuclear or hydro or whatever. So
yeah, and Jennifer, I would just remind folks that in the Midwest, for the MISO footprint, which is 15 states, we're only at 10% renewables right now. So we have a long, long way to go to get to 80%. So, you know, asking the question, when does the system break when we load on renewables, is really not the right question. The key challenges right now are some of these other things that the panelists are going to talk about: community acceptance, getting more grid to use so that we can get the generation online, making, you know, having these community conversations about benefits that flow to communities, and you know, debunking myths. So there's a lot of work to do while people are still working on emerging technologies and how do we get to 100%. But when we think about, you know, we need to get to 20 before we get to 50, and 50 before we get to 80. So in kind of looking at what's the pragmatic thing to spend our time on, we want to get that number up before we think about the key challenges of 100%.
of that last question. Okay,
Yep.
that's really helpful.
Yep.
So we have at least 5 minutes for some discussion before that. For everyone else on this session, the plan is to, in a little while, break into breakout groups. Each panelist will be in one of those breakout groups to continue that conversation. I'm told you will be randomly shunted to a panelist. I'm sorry you can't pick which topic you most want to talk about, but they all, I think, interconnect with each other. But I think before we do that, I think there's such value in the cross-fertilization that I would like first to invite the panelists. Do you have questions for each other? As you heard each other, what would you like? Is there a particular question or two that you would like to hear more about from one of your fellow panelists? And there are only 4 of you, so feel free just to speak up. Maria.
You know, I just wanted to kind of extend the conversation on sort of that interdependency we've been talking about. In order to create a pathway, we need to understand what has to happen in order for something else to happen. So I appreciate all the speakers bringing up the community engagement and ensuring that communities understand the impacts and the benefits, but also working with utilities and understanding, you know, what they can and cannot do, understanding that the energy doesn't, like for Wisconsin, we're a net importer of energy. And so we're very reliant on the world around us. And so this doesn't happen in a silo. We have to like reach out to the region and work regionally as well. And so I think that interdependency discussion is super important. And for our clean energy planning process, we're actually kicking off our clean energy planning process here in the state. And, you know, we are bringing in technical experts that have specific knowledge and data in certain areas so that we can identify those specific interdependencies for Wisconsin specifically and figure out what is that path forward and really think methodically about the steps to get to where we want to go. Because we do understand that it's not, you know, we could turn off every coal facility today. We could say, here's a mandate, shut them down. But the impact of that is huge and it's not in the best interest of customers. So I just extending that conversation a little bit. I appreciate that everybody sort of touched on that, and that's something that has been elevated here in the state as well.
Yeah, I would just say to that, reaching consensus on the pathway and what to do is the key work that we all really have to do. There are many ways to achieve the goals that states, utilities, average folks want to achieve, but are they all cost effective? Do they impact people in different ways? Do they bring new opportunities into a community or a region if something is going away? So I think that, I mean, Maria, my head spins when I listen to you, you know, kind of weave the story of all the pieces that you have to, you know, think about. And my question for you may be, you know, how do you sort through all that and decide what kind of policy framework to provide? What goes first? Do you have some kind of key things that you would like to set out there? And so how do you sort through it all and make sense of it?
Yes.
Yay!
Yes. I mean, it's so that is the challenge, right? And that's, again, what I had mentioned was that there's so much work going on. So the way that I've seen it is that we're not starting from scratch. There's already been a lot of work that's been done and some thought processes and some strategic planning that's been done in the region. And so one of the things that we're doing in Wisconsin is we're building off the Great Plains Institute, for example, has roadmaps related to transportation, electricity, and then they'll soon be coming out with a building roadmap to a pathway to decarbonization in these sectors. So what I've done is I have put together a list of key strategies. It's just like this laundry list of all the things that we've been talking about. Electrification, clean fuels policy, just, I mean, I think it's like 3 pages of little teeny tiny chart. And one of the things that we're doing is I'm running it past agencies and I'm running it past stakeholders. I'm running it past people to say, hey, here's this laundry list of things that we could move forward with. Now we need to really categorize things as like, what can we do short term? What is going to need modeling? What needs that further analysis? What are things that are going to be most cost effective? What do we have data for? And so organizing it in a way that we can have a better understanding of things that we can come out the gate and say, we can do this. We have the regulatory infrastructure in place, the efficiency, for example, energy efficiency, like we have funding mechanisms, we have the infrastructure in place. Our Public Service Commission is doing a potential study on like where we can dig deeper in efficiency. So there's all these things already happening. So why not leverage what's happening there and then use our resources to focus on the things that are a little bit more difficult, like transmission and distribution. Like we're going to really have to think about how we improve our transmission and distribution. And so like, that's kind of where we're at, organizing it, making sure that the right voices are at the table to have those discussions.
Great. What you were saying about where you need modeling, where you need further research, I think one hope of conversations like this is, as you and other states are approaching similar problems, where are the synergies to draw on each other's expertise across all the many experts who we have throughout the Midwest and beyond. Sarah or Lou, did you want to, or Beth, did you have more to?
No, I would just add that the other lever that you have is the marketplace. When you let the market know that you have a need, lots of times there's competition for helping find those solutions that are going to be cost effective for customers. And so, so I think that one thing that elected officials can do and policymakers can do is to signal what the gaps are and let innovation try to help fill the need cost effectively. And lots of times you'll see there's, competition to help utilities fulfill their goals.
I was just going to add that I think a lot of times, and you guys can forgive me if I'm wrong, it seems like right now the near-term gaps really in moving forward on renewables are often kind of this, in terms of the research needs, are social science and policy science and aligning, right? It's understanding the stakeholders and how you get the right coalitions together. But I also, maybe it's because I'm a recovering engineer, want to highlight that there is a role for technologists in this, right? A lot of my work is on wind, or has been on wind energy. And one of the complaints about wind energy is the red lights at night on the top of wind turbines, right? Engineers came up with a solution that can turn that off, except when except when an aircraft is in the area, right? Like understanding maybe what the social block is can also inform technology. And so if you are on this, have joined this and think like, oh, I'm an engineer, like what role can I play? Well, we're talking about how there are policy and social gaps to deployment, but some of that hopefully can inspire new designs, physical designs.
Great point. It's a great point. Lou?
I would just build off of what Sarah said. She mentioned how you can potentially add carbon sinks to solar systems. And one of my secret favorite things about renewable energy development is that you can build it in a better way than we built previous generation, right? You can use this transition to improve electric generation, not in just making it cleaner, but also implementing these, putting native vegetation at a solar site, for example, which can improve stormwater management, water quality, can also be a carbon sink, and then provide pollinator habitat. You don't get that with a coal plant, right? No one's going to plant pollinator habitat around a coal plant, or at least maybe not in a serious way. But there's a real opportunity with new generation, with new transmission even. And I think there's so much room for innovation, and that's maybe the most exciting thing, that as we set these North Star goals of total decarbonization, we have these more near-term benchmarks we can set for innovation, for trying to build it better and include those communities in that decision making.
Yeah, and there's a lot of work, Jennifer, going on in that area, and it's the solar piece that's so new, and we're at the very front end of figuring out some of these things. And so I think there's a lot that can be done. I think the regulators are asking though too, as well as the development community, what's appropriate for electricity customers to bear as far as some of the other goals that Lou mentioned. They're all great and we need all of them, but what should a generation project bear versus a general fund appropriation from a state to an area to do some of these things, or what? So there's a lot of questions in all of these areas that we're at the very front end of, because we're developing this new generation profile. And so I think we need to just understand what's appropriate in each one of these tranches of development, and what we're asking and what we're paying for. What are we getting? What are we paying for? So lots of work here.
That's great. Okay.
Can I just add, can I just add one more thing to that in response to that, is that in Wisconsin, because we've had a directive from our administration, our Public Service Commission, the regulatory body, has reacted in such a way that they're opening more exploratory dockets. So it's not just about decision making, what historically we've done, and this is how we've done it. They're now spending time collecting a lot of information. So they opened an EV docket. They're looking at the opportunities and being informed and trying to expand that knowledge before we jump into a decision point. So I think that is a really good point, that the policymakers and the regulators need to be educated on this so that they can make informed decisions, and the data behind it and the value and the research and all of the great intellectual capacity that we have all around needs to be brought into that fold so that we can get them up to speed and that we can make faster decisions or more informed decisions.
Thank you all so much. Okay, we are about to move into breakouts. Each breakout session, we're grateful to the student facilitators who volunteered to run that session. So folks will have about 20 minutes. Looks like it's about to happen. We'll have about 20 minutes there, discuss with your panelist, and then we will reconvene for quick readouts and closing comments. Thank you all so much. I'll see you on the other side.
I take a simplistic view, but I don't understand this 2050 deadline. Ameren, our local company, just announced with great fanfare that they were getting rid of all their coal-fired generators by 2050. It seems to me
That time went too quickly, Jennifer.
I so agree. I feel like my week is just getting started. It's hard to know how to trade off, how to use our time. But since we don't have a lot and we have a great final keynote in 10 minutes, what I just want to do is invite our student facilitators for each group to report out a quick headline or two from their conversation, and to reassure everybody that we are going to gather all of that and get the benefit of all the discussions. If you don't, I'm going to go in reverse order. So I'm going to start with breakout 4, Josiah and Beth. Josiah, headlines.
Yeah, I really feel like this is more of a question for Beth. Our topic was sort of all over the place, from eminent domain to the things that we can do moving forward. So Beth, if you have something that you want to share with the group, that'd be great.
Sure. We touched a little bit on community. How do you interact with community? We talked about how our nuclear plants viewed in the decarbonization by 2050. We did talk about eminent domain. We were a little bit all over the board as far as transmission goes, and boy, I'm not sure we had a thread that really was a key. We went a few different places.
Okay, that's fine. Breakout number 3, the Maria Marie team. Marie.
Yeah, so our discussion also was kind of everywhere, but one of the main topics were about utilities and use of renewable energy, and it focused on how community can be involved and being considerate of those who doesn't have the ability financial wide to even contribute or invest. So being considerate, and also importing natural resources and natural renewable energy from different states to each other. So like we can share renewable energies with each other as well. Yeah, we actually mostly talked about renewable energy, utilities, and the community and the customers and supporting each other.
Maria, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think Jenny, who was in our group, brought up a great point, like why the 2050 goal and why is it so far out? And can we move faster? And I think that's very valid. There are steps though that we need to take first to make a pathway and ensure that people aren't having more of an energy burden, that we're have reliability and resilience and all of those keywords, but we do recognize the need to move faster. So that was one of the things. And then at the end, we were just briefly at the end talking about resources, and if somebody wanted to install solar or if somebody wanted to move forward, how would they get the information to start doing that? And so one of the recommendations was reaching out to Great Plains Institute or the state energy offices as a starting point to get information to move forward.
Great, thank you so much. All right, then we have, sorry, lost my list. Group 2, Sarah and Remy.
Yeah, we also covered a lot of different topics. But one thing we were talking about a lot is different energy sources and what role nuclear power may have in the mix, as well as how those different sources affect almost like taxpayer dollars, like how a coal power plant could be providing a lot of tax money for one city. But then if solar power grows in rural areas, that could provide a lot of tax money for those areas, and figuring out what to do if the coal plant closes, where all that tax money goes. And yeah, but we were really talking about a lot of different topics. Sarah, do you have anything to add?
I would just add, it seemed like our conversation was similar to group number 3 in terms of like what voice do not just ratepayers, but those who rarely have a voice in the process have, but also the role of utilities. We kind of came up to that at the end and talking about how utility business models seem to be one of the challenges in all of this. And like, isn't that an opportunity for some additional research, understanding like how you can align those and get community voices and demands of communities kind of in that mix.
Excellent, thank you. And Matthew and Lou.
Sure. So yeah, we also touched on a lot of topics, which I think is generally what everybody else did. But we sort of started talking about how there's a greater need for like basic education about how there are regional grids and how energy is taken in and out of the grid. And someone touched on the point that there is even opposition from, for example, like coal power plants, different things like that, to sort of spread disinformation to stop the public from learning about or supporting clean energy. And then next, we sort of touched on how a lot of these rural communities, they have a big legacy with their land and their communities, and that sort of has to be addressed in switching over to clean energy or switching the grid over. And then lastly, we sort of talked about how at this point with climate anxiety worsening, should we just wait for the grid to green itself? These are kind of the major questions right now. So yeah, Lou, if you have anything else to add.
No, I just wish we had more time on that final topic, this topic of, how do you deal with public institutions that think they can just sort of dig their heels in and hope that this will solve itself? And I think that is such a great topic, and I wish we could have covered it more. But it's a fascinating question of how do you make that persuasive argument that you shouldn't wait and you shouldn't just take it for granted that you can play a more proactive role.
Well, thank you, everyone, and thanks for all of you in the breakouts for what sounds like wide-ranging but excellent discussions. Hopefully, this has sparked some new connections and further conversations that will flow from this. Before we lose you, I want to remind everyone that immediately following this at 11:15 is the Midwest Climate Summit's final keynote session. The speaker is Justin Gillis, who's writing a book about climate change, was a New York Times reporter. His title is Communicating the Crisis, Should We Just Change the Subject? So the other thing I would say is that this fall, and in the chat is the link to that session. I'd also say that this fall we had our series of think tanks, the Midwest Climate Summit. We're starting our planning now, our steering committee, for what form it takes in the spring. And I think that is likely to be a forum where organizations can come together with more information about their ambitious targets, what they're doing to meet them. It's a place to celebrate and inspire each other to greater action. So hopefully you will all be with us for that ride going forward as well. And I just want to close by thanking again our wonderful panelists, Maria, Lou, Sarah, and Beth, and all the organizers of the Midwest Climate Summit. It's been a heavy lift, especially for folks at WashU, to pull this all together, and I think they all did a great job and want to commend them. So with that, we'll see you at the next session, I hope. So be well.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. This was great. Great organization. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Maria. Lovely to have you.
Take care.
Mhm.